Hey guys, my name is Marie and I am SkyWest flight attendant, or I used to be a SkyWest flight attendant. I left the company this year to go back to school and I still miss flying and I love the company. This video is not going to be anything hateful towards SkyWest. It's just going to be about interview tips and about the company's culture and basically anything you could be interested in, because I have noticed that there are not many videos on the internet about SkyWest Airlines, and I just kind of want to help you to maybe get hired with SkyWest and also realize if SkyWest Airlines is the right airline for you. So today's video is about the interview process. SkyWest has open houses all over the United States, so make sure that you watch their website closely because it will tell you if there is an open house nearby or in the state next to you. You can just show up, anybody is invited. Before you do so, make sure that you research the company and learn something about them. That's very important. It just shows interest, and also it might save you a trip to interview that you're not actually interested in. I will tell you my experience from 2016 when I was hired and when I went through the interview. Many people say they go through several interviews before they're hired. I was lucky enough to get hired the first time. My interview was in Salt Lake City and it was in March 2016, and we had about 90 people who showed up, which is pretty good number. So I was kind of scared how competitive it could be. The first thing I have noticed is that many people were not dressed properly for the interview. It seriously still blows my mind. But there were people who showed up in jeans or who showed up in shirts that were too small or too revealing, tank tops, people who just didn't do really anything with their hair, and so on. If you know something, if you should know something about SkyWest is very conservative company and they care very much about the dress code. I think that kind of goes without saying that you should be dressed properly for the interview. Now, a lot of people get lost in the details, such as should I wear red lipstick to my interview or pink, and so on. These little details, they don't really matter as much as you think. What matters the most is your personality. For example, I wore a black dress and a blazer. I had my hair, it was, sorry, I'm just trying to picture it. My hair was in a bun. I had a very natural makeup. I had dark purple hair, nails, not hair, definitely not hair, nails, and I had heels, but not stilettos, and then I had also pantyhose. And many people would say, no, wear a white shirt and a pencil skirt and a scarf around your neck. You don't necessarily have to look like a flight attendant. In my personal opinion, you don't. You just have to look very professionally. And I think I did. And I think I did a very good job with that. And I'm not bragging, but I definitely put a lot of thought into it. But by the end of the day, I realized I want to wear something that I'm more comfortable wearing. Sorry. And I'm more of a dress girl, so I wore a dress and I didn't wear a skirt and a shirt. So that's just an example. Don't overthink it, but don't show up in sweatpants because your personality is not going to cover for that. The first thing that they did at an interview, they collected our resume. One thing that I should also mention is be there on time. And by on time, I mean 15 minutes early. So we showed up, and then they would go and collect our resumes. One of the flight attendants or the recruiters, but yeah, a flight attendant on a special assignment, She would be collecting these resumes, and then she also asked, do you know someone who works for SkyWest? Yes or no. I didn't. If you say yes, then they say, do you have a letter of recommendation? I've noticed that, but don't worry, like, majority of the people will not know anyone working for SkyWest, so don't think that's gonna be something that's gonna kill your chances. Not at all. Second part of this process was they would go and measure our height without shoes, obviously, and you have to be, for girls, I know it's between 5 and 6 feet, so I'm 5'2"-ish, almost 5'3", so I pass. So then they would split us in 2 rooms, and I don't even remember how they did it, but somehow they split us in 2 rooms, and we would just sit and wait. What I did, and now it kind of depends on where the interview is, but in my room it was set up as like a podium and then several chairs. I sat in the first row, and I think that's a good idea because the recruiters will spend about an hour on a stage talking about the company, and they will most likely notice people in the first row. So you want them to remember you, so sit in the first row. Next thing you should also do, even before you show up for the interview, turn off your cell phone. Do not even look at your cell phone. Let your friends, family know that you might not be available for 5 hours. You're at an interview. Let them know. Turn it off. Don't even look at your phone. A good thing to wear is your watch. So that's something that flight attendants wear. I think it's a great idea to wear a watch to the interview, so if you need to watch time, you have your watch. So I sat in the first row, and there were girls already next to me, so I made sure that I would start a conversation with them. So be very friendly. I think that's kind of understandable that you have to be friendly as a flight attendant, and they will really observe you. Even though you think they're not looking, they are looking. Because later on, when I was a flight attendant, I swear that people would always think like, oh, she's not looking, I can be sneaky, but not at all. Flight attendants are really trained to be kind of sneaky and always be watching people. So make sure that you're friendly and you just engage in a conversation. And again, there were people that were probably friends. They came in the group of 2, and then the whole time they would be like sitting together, not talking to anyone. That's not what the company is looking for. They're looking for friendly people, trust me. Okay, so then the recruiters would come and they would talk about the company. There were 2 recruiters, and they would take turns. And they talk about everything, really, starting from the domiciles. Domicile means base for the flight attendants. They would talk about pay, uniforms, destinations, what airlines they fly for. Really, I think they covered everything. At the end, they ask us if we have any questions. It is always a good idea when you go to an interview to have questions prepared. I personally always think about what I could ask them, and just really like think about, is this a smart question to ask, or is it kind of stupid? Because there were people who asked, do you guys have a base in Florida? This is a question that you can easily research on the internet. Ask something like, what kind of people are you looking for? Ask a question about the schedule, or I don't know, something that is just not obvious. Don't ask too many questions about, or 0 questions actually. I would recommend asking 0 questions about the employee travel, your flight benefits, vacation, and so on. Like, do not ask questions necessarily about yourself, but ask questions about what the company is looking for. Very important thing that you might heard about SkyWest is that they are very strict when it comes to tattoos, visible tattoos. Feel free to have tattoos that are not visible. At the end of the session, they would also check for our tattoos, and we had to raise our arms, and they would check our wrists. And I don't know how they do it this year, but from what I heard, they still do that. They still very much care about that. Tattoos are not allowed to be covered with makeup or band-aids or anything like that. If you have a tattoo on your stomach, you're fine, but it might not be visible in your uniform. And at the end of the session, they would say, if you have a tattoo but you're not sure if the uniform is gonna cover it up, please come up to us and ask. And I've noticed that after the first session, some of the people would do that and ask the recruiters. And I think that they probably send them home because they told them this is not going to be covered up by our uniform. I'm sorry. You might find it weird or like discriminating towards people with tattoos, but realize that as flight attendants, we're exposed to different cultures and religions and different generations, and visible tattoos are still not professional image. I have nothing against people with tattoos, let's just put it this way, but that's what the flight attendants should and shouldn't have. Okay, so then we would get a little break, and after the little break, we would talk. Everybody would take a turn, and you get 1 minute, 60 seconds to answer a question that was the same for everyone. Very simple question, but definitely kind of tricky. The question was, what would make you a great flight attendant? Listen, this question is not why do you want to be a flight attendant, even though so many people answer that question. The question is, what would make you a great flight attendant? Because I did a research on the company, I practiced my answer. I practiced my question in front of a mirror, but I made sure that I wasn't like rehearsing. There's a difference between practicing and rehearsing. When you rehearse, you just memorize your answer. With practicing, you kind of sort of memorizing, but it still doesn't sound like a broken record. So I would practice my answer, and I would also time my answer, which is very important. There were people who would talk for 3 minutes, and guess what? They didn't get face-to-face interview. They also told us that they're not interested in our family, and they're not interested in the names of our dogs and so on. Really, just think about your answer and how you want to approach it. A lot of people would go and say, I want to be a flight attendant because I love to travel. This is the worst possible answer you can give them. Seriously. Obviously, so many people are in the industry for the travel perks, but that's not why flight attendants are here. I don't really remember what I said, but I remember I targeted my answer to customer service, safety, and security. Those 3 things are why flight attendants are on board. And I would also make sure that when I was practicing my answers, or one answer actually, in front of the mirror, I made sure that I watched my facial expressions and my hands, because I sometimes tend to like touch my hair and stuff. And I would also practice like not, you know how like some people like walk all over and they like start tapping. Yeah, so I practiced that, and I think that made also a good impression, because a flight attendants, they perform some sort of a speech when they go on board and when they do the safety demo, especially for a regional airline. You are sometimes alone on board, so make sure that you also pay attention to that. Well, and also there's one thing that I didn't mention, but when I went to SkyWest interview, I wasn't 100% sure if I wanted to do this. I had a boyfriend at that time, and with the airline, they sometimes have to relocate. And at their interview, they also told us that getting Salt Lake Airport out of training or being based there right away was very hard. So I was like, oh crap. But anyway, I didn't really know if I wanted to be a flight attendant because it just kind of sounded like a big change for me. But then after I answered their question, the 60-second question, it just like felt right, and I felt the feeling I want this job. Then everybody would just answer the question, and then we would have a little break for 45 minutes. That's when they would get together and just kind of talk about the applicants and who they should send home and they shouldn't send home. Well, after 45 minutes, they would put papers with our names on a door to one of the rooms, and if the name was on it, you would get to the face-to-face interview. If not, unfortunately, you were sent home. My name was on the door, and I was very, very happy because I think only 18 people out of 90 would make it, and I was just so very happy about it, and it just made me feel really good. As you can tell, I have accent, and sometimes I feel like I can't compete people who speak English perfectly, but it just made me feel really good. Now, face-to-face interview, again, don't expect anything super hard if you pay attention to the recruiters and what they talked about. Also make sure that you kind of sort of practice answers to customer service and mostly customer service questions. They also want to know about your past and about your education and about who you are. That's sometimes the toughest question. Tell us about your strengths and weaknesses. A lot of people don't know how to answer it. I remember that the first thing that they did, they would ask me, do you have a passport? It's very important to have a passport when you start training. And then they would also ask me about my previous employment and why I left my previous jobs, and they would go over my resume. So make sure that you're familiar with your resume and what you put on it. Definitely target your resume to customer service. They will ask a lot of questions. Then there were questions, just like I said, about customer service, and make sure that you answer in this STAR format. STAR stands for situation, the ST stands for situation or task, A stands for action, and R stands for results. So I want to maybe talk about the STAR format in my next video, but that's what I did, and it works great for interview, for really any type of interview. Then they would ask me, the only question I really hesitated on was a question about what would you do, and the scenario was you are supposed to board people, and then there is a mom with a baby, frequent flyer, military personnel, and nervous flyer. Who would you board first and who would you board last? That kind of threw me off, but that was really like the only question where I hesitated, because I thought about it maybe too much, because I was like, well, the airlines, they already have like boarding groups, and if he's a frequent flyer, he is probably in the best boarding group, in the first boarding group. But are they asking me what I would do personally? Should I consider that he probably already has boarding group assigned? I was kind of confused on it, but I still made it through, I would say, very confidently. And at the end, they also give you a time to ask any questions, and I remember I asked 2 questions, and I think that asking 2 questions is a good idea, and I don't really remember what I asked them, but I think that one of them was what kind of person you're looking for, or who would you consider as your perfect candidate. So I asked that, and then after that we were free to go, and we went home, and I believe I spent like 5 hours at the interview. It was very long, But Salt Lake City was also one of the biggest interviews, so if you go somewhere else, might not definitely be 5 hours. But just so you know. Then they told us that it would take about 2 weeks to hear back. So obviously, I was checking my email every second of the day, and then I was just like imagining myself like how I would get home, just wait, sit down, then open the email somewhere quietly alone. But I got the email within 10 days, and I opened the email like on accident, and it just like jumped on me that I was selected, and I was very happy and also kind of sad or kind of confused because just like I said, I had a boyfriend and I didn't really know what's gonna happen. But I accepted the job and I started my training in June 2016, and it really changed my life. So that's my video about the interview process. Feel free to ask any questions, or if you have anything that you want to share, and also let me know if you are going to SkyWest interview, and if you did, if you got selected, let me know, and if you didn't get selected, also let me know. Just feel free to share anything. And I will see you later. Bye.